Hello, everybody. I'm going to be doing some analysis on events in the cricketing world. Well, we know that Australia have successfully retained the Ashes after their victory at Old Trafford in the fourth Test match of the series on Sunday. And that means that they have won the Ashes for the first time in England since 2001. And obviously, the Australians were over the moon with the results and they've been celebrating ecstatically while acknowledging that they still have a test match to play and they'll still like to win the series and win the five-match series in its own right, as opposed to just retaining the Ashes. But they've got the job done. It's been a big focus of theirs, this Ashes tour, more so than perhaps the World Cup even. And in fact, much more so than a World Cup. This was their main objective in this whole English summer. They'd won the World Cup on so many occasions. They've won the World Cup three times in a row in 2007, 2003, 2000. I beg your pardon. They've won the World Cup three times since they've last won the Ashes series in England. Not in a row, but they've won the World Cup three times in 2003, 2007, and 2015, whereas they've last won an Ashes series in England in 2001. So naturally, the bigger achievement for them was to win the Ashes and win the Ashes on English soil. And obviously, everything was pretty much geared towards that. And they've managed to achieve what no other Australian team has done since Steve Waugh's side in 2001. And Justin Langer and Tim Payne, they can be mightily proud of their efforts and of the result and the achievement. And they had to work hard on that final day in Manchester. England were not giving away their wickets easily. They resisted stubbornly. I think Craig Overton showed a lot of heart and a lot of character in that final session. And they would have had demons in the back of their minds after what happened at Headingley, a game they should have closed out and won, but they weren't able to do so. So they would have been desperate to close out this game and finish the job and get the job done and dusted. And this time, lightning did not strike twice for England. They couldn't get out of jail again. And despite their best efforts, Australia won the Test match by a fairly comprehensive margin. And it's a defeat for England, which means they can no longer regain the Ashes, having lost them in Australia a couple of winters ago, 4-0. Nonetheless, there's still plenty to play for at the Oval for England. They can draw the series 2 apiece. They can draw a five-match series in its own right, 2 apiece, against a fine Australian side with a good pace attack and a world-class batsman in Steve Smith. That would be no mean achievement to draw a five-match series 2-all on the back of winning the World Cup for the first time. It's been a memorable summer for England, and they'll be hoping they can conclude it on a winning note, despite not picking up the Ashes at the end of the presentation ceremony of the fifth Test match. They can still be proud of their efforts this summer to win the World Cup for the first ever time under home pressures and expectation. And they've played some good Test cricket as well, albeit not going to pick up this series honours, series spoils as such. So that's events in Manchester and the Ashes. Obviously, I mentioned that drawing the series 2 apiece in its own right should be a big motivation for England. As Michael Vaughan mentioned, any test between England and Australia is always a special occasion. But obviously, you have the World Test Championship as well, and England will be hoping they can conclude this series with the same number of points that they've gained as Australia, which would be 56 apiece if the series is level at 2-2 all. And I'm not sure the Ashes is the biggest thing or the biggest prize or around in Test cricket anymore. With the introduction of the World Test Championship, I believe the biggest prize in Test cricket and the biggest thing to strive towards in Test cricket is the World Test Championship. Because in order to win the World Test Championship, or at least feature in the final of it, you would have had to do well against a variety of opposition. So 6 opposition in total, in a variety of conditions in at least 4 different countries, with your 3 away series and obviously the 3 home series you get. And that should be a bigger incentive for players. The World Test Championship as a whole is more important than just the Ashes series. The Ashes series obviously is the biggest rivalry in Test cricket. It's the biggest bilateral series in Test cricket, but it's not the biggest thing in Test cricket anymore with the introduction of the World Test Championship. That's the biggest thing, that's the biggest prize, and that's got to be England's focus going forward. And, as I mentioned, if they can draw the series at the Oval, they at least pick up the same number of World Test Championship points from this series as Australia. And if anything, in the World Test Championship, the lesser series, the series where it's only 2 tests or 3 tests, they're even more valuable than the Ashes as far as World Test Championship points are concerned, because obviously there are less points available for a test win in a 4-match or a 5-match series, but more for a 2-match or a 3-match series, with each test series being capped at 120 points in the World Test Championship. So I think the Ashes is probably the 3rd biggest thing that English cricketers should strive towards in Test cricket. The World Test Championship first, then the Test rankings, then the Ashes. But of course, in terms of a bilateral contest in its own right, in terms of a rivalry on its own right, the Ashes is obviously a very special, very historical, and means a lot, as you can tell from Australia's celebrations on Sunday night in Manchester. Elsewhere in the Test world, Afghanistan have recorded a famous victory over Bangladesh in a one-off Test match away from home. And this is their 2nd Test victory after their Test win against Ireland in March. And it's a fitting farewell for Mohammad Nabi, who says goodbye to Test cricket. He's been a real mainstay and stalwart of Afghanistan cricket, and a good way for him to end his brief Test career. But he's been part of the journey that's seen Afghanistan get Test status, and it's good to see these teams like Afghanistan and Ireland, they've just recently been awarded Test status, putting up a good showing and a good fight. We saw Ireland bowl out England for 85 at Lord's in July and be competitive over the course of the Test match, and Afghanistan as well. So they're both sides making a decent transition to the Test game. Obviously, there will be challenges ahead. There will be games where they are defeated heavily, but they haven't disgraced themselves by any stretch of the imagination in their early Test encounters. And it should be interesting to see how they develop. Obviously, they're not going to be part of the World Test Championship, but they will have opportunities here and there to play Test cricket and sort of prepare teams for bigger series with these one-off Test matches, like we've seen with the Ireland getting the chance to play at Lord's just before the Ashes. Elsewhere in the cricketing world, In Pakistan, there's been plenty going on. Obviously, the death of Abdul Qadir has shocked the cricketing world. The man who revolutionised the art of wrist spin bowling in a fast bowling dominant era and picked up 236 test scalps and made leg spin an attacking art in the 1980s, and was such a key part of Imran Khan and Javed Miandad's success as test captain. He featured in Pakistan's test tours to England in 1982 and 87 and made noticeable contributions with the ball. But he was a phenomenal leg spinner, particularly in test matches played in Pakistan. He had a phenomenal test record in Pakistan. He also had a good World Cup career in 1983 and 1987, and he eventually played his last international match in 1993. He's been a trailblazer. He's been a pioneer for the art of wrist spin bowling, and he'll be sorely missed by all. And it's extremely sad to hear about his passing at just the age of 63. And our thoughts go out to him and his family at this difficult time. And obviously in Pakistan, there's going to be a new domestic structure that's coming in a similar model to Australia, where just 6 first-class teams will feature. And the Quaid-e-Azam Trophy commences on the 14th of this month. So a brand new domestic structure has been set up. Imran Khan's long wish of having a domestic structure which is more competitive and has less teams and is done on a regional basis has come to fruition finally. And we're going to have first 11 and second 11 cricket, and there's been clarity over the payments and how much a first-class player will earn if they're not centrally contracted, and that's both for first 11 and second 11 cricket. So there'll be less teams, more competitive cricket, and first-class caps, and will have to be earned. So some big changes to the structure of Pakistan domestic cricket finally coming to fruition. It's been talked about for a long time. Imran Khan has pressed for it for a long time, and now finally, as Prime Minister, after a year in office, it's come through. And it's going to be interesting to see how it pans out. And it's a refreshing change, it's a radical change, but there'll be less first-class matches played and less players featuring in first-class games, but the quality should be enhanced, and they're very much following the Sheffield Shields model. There'll be 6 teams playing each other home and away, so 30 matches in total, followed by a final. And there'll also be a second 11 competition that will run alongside the main first class competition. Obviously, in Pakistan cricket, there's been a major announcement with Misbah-ul-Haq taking over as national cricket team head coach across all 3 formats, in addition to being the chief selector and also running a franchise side in the Pakistan Super League. So a lot of roles on his shoulder. The process by which he came to this position has been questioned, and there has been a debate whether there's been a conflict of interest, because he was ultimately part of the committee which decided to look beyond Mickey Arthur and not give him another contract. And then eventually he was persuaded to apply for the role, and he got the role. I would have gone for a split coaching system. I think he would have been, Misbah-ul-Haq would have been a fine and understandable choice in Test cricket, along with coaching a PSL franchise side. That would have been perfectly understandable, but I would have gone for someone like Dean Jones, someone who was an excellent one-day player in his own right for the one-day and T20 national teams, and therefore you would have had the best of both worlds, with a local coach for the traditional form of cricket and an overseas voice coming in for the white ball formats, and with Misbah being the test coach, it would have been understandable and perfectly fine for him to coach in the PSL franchise tournament, as they're barely conflicting roles, as they're very different forms of cricket. As chief selector, I'm interested to see how he goes. His performance as a pundit for Crick Info during the course of the World Cup was interesting, because he did not have either Haris Sohail or Shaheen Shah Afridi in his preferred playing 11 when doing a punditry and picking his preferred 11 for Crick Info during the World Cup, and all of a sudden now he's landed into the selector role. A lot of his selections while he was captain in the limited overs formats were debatable and just frankly bad selections. For example, persisting with Shoaib Malik and Kamran Akmal in the 2013 Champions Trophy, picking Yunus Khan in the 2015 World Cup squad, picking and dropping Shahid Afridi, sort of going around in circles in 2013, picking him one series, dropping him the next, picking him again. In one-day cricket, I tended to feel he was favouring the older players a lot more, and planning wasn't always there, I felt, with the one-day side and the that he was leading, and kept picking tried and tested older players who were lacking contributions, and it was obvious they shouldn't have been in the side. For example, I hope he does not pick Mohammad Hafiz now in the one-day side. What's the point? Mohammad Hafiz, with his age, he's not going to be around in 2023. Even though he's a friend of Mohammad Hafiz and he's someone he rates highly, and he's when Mohammad Hafiz was out of the Pakistan squad in the Asia Cup last year, Misbah questioned that selection. So I hope that Mohammad Hafiz is not picked by him in one-day cricket going forward, or in limited overs cricket for that matter. And I hope he will give chances to the youngsters and players who have more of a long-term future for Pakistan. Obviously, Sri Lanka are coming to play 3 ODIs and 3 T20s. And those games will be in Karachi and Lahore respectively. But the news that has come through is that a lot of the frontline Sri Lankan players are reluctant. And initially this was supposed to be a test tour, as part of the World Test Championship, 2 test matches. But Sri Lanka, they're not going to risk sending a second string or third string team when there is so much riding on the tests with regards to the World Test Championship. So what the PCB have done is they're going to play the limited overs matches first, and hope that acts as a springboard for the test cricket returning to Pakistan, and they've pushed those World Test Championship fixtures to later in the year. But Sri Lanka, they're not going to send a second string or a third string team for World Test Championship matches. There's so much riding on the test matches in a 2 test series, 60 points for a test, so it's going to be difficult for Pakistan to host test matches within the World Test Championship if frontline players from the opposition are reluctant, because it's not just any test series, it's not any typical test series. There's a lot at stake as far as points are concerned, and teams are fighting for that elusive first final in 2021 at Lords. So that's going to be a challenge for the PCB in terms of getting Test cricket back to Pakistan with the World Test Championship now in operation. It's not just any typical Test series anymore, where teams are possibly even not overly fussed about the results and are prepared to risk sending a weakened team for just a one-off test. That's not going to be the case, certainly within the World Test Championship. So it's I would have preferred Pakistan just to play the test matches and get their World Test Championship campaign up and running, get themselves on the leaderboard ahead of the challenging test series they have coming up in Australia in November, and go to Australia with World Test Championship points under their belt. I would have, there would have been no problem postponing the ODI or the T20 series and doing that in Pakistan at a later date. I would have preferred them to stick with the original itinerary that they were supposed to follow and play those World Test Championship encounters, because it appears it's highly unlikely that test matches will be played in Pakistan, even if this limited overs tour is successful. Also, another interesting development in Pakistan cricket is Waqar Younis is now back in the coaching staff. This is his fifth time he's part of the Pakistan coaching staff, either as head coach or bowling coach. I believe we're going around in circles and we should give opportunities to others. Obviously, Waqar is a big name. He was a world-class bowler in his own right, and he's got a lot of knowledge. And he did well when he was head coach in Test cricket. He was part of the coaching staff that saw Pakistan's rise to number one in the Test ranking. He wasn't eventually there when they reached it, but it was under his watch that they climbed up those rankings between 2014 and 2016. And when he left as head coach, he had actually won 3 Test series in a row in the calendar year in 2015. And his guidance had really helped the likes of Rahat Ali, Imran Khan, the Test bowler, not the Prime Minister, and Wahab Riaz in that 2015 World Cup and the 2015 Test series against England and the UAE. So he did well with the fast bowling stocks, and the fast bowlers' records under his coaching were impressive. But I feel, we're going around in circles by giving the same people coaching roles over and over again, and I would have preferred to give someone else opportunities in the coaching department. But at least we don't have to hear Waqar on commentary, and a lot of people don't dislike his commentary, his grammatical errors and some of the comments he makes, some of the tweets he makes, like in the 2017 Women's World Cup, he suggested women's cricket should be 30 overs long in order to generate interest when they already play T20 cricket, when there's already a Women's World T20 which is existent. I believe, coming back to England and the Ashes, I believe we can't be overly harsh on England. It's an odd sort of summer. It's an odd sort of Ashes series, because never before has there been an Ashes series in this country and it's not been the main event of the summer. I mean, there has been a World Cup and an Ashes series in the same summer before in England in 1975, but obviously the World Cup was brand new then. It was a sort of a leap into the unknown. It wasn't that big of a deal. But this time, it was understandable and justifiable that England's primary focus was on the World Cup. It was at home. It's something they've never won before, and they're a much better one-day team or a white ball team than they are a red ball team at present. It was a tournament they had a dire record in over the last 6 editions, and therefore you can understand that their emphasis on one-day cricket, and it's justifiable if you look at it from this angle. You know, a World Cup happened in England after 20 years. It happens once in a generation. Ashes series come and go, and there's an Ashes series in England every 4 years. A World Cup happened in England after 20 years. Once in a generation versus once every 4 years. So, you know, totally understandable that England's focus was on one-day cricket and the World Cup, and the Ashes took a bit of a backseat, or was a bit of an afterthought. But yeah, that's the way it goes. And it's difficult to be successful in both one-day cricket or white ball cricket and test cricket at the same time. For example, I'll give you an example of Pakistan in 2016. In August 2016, when they reached the #1 ranking in test cricket, they were ranked number 9 in ODI cricket. And there was a huge contrast between their performance levels and their results in one-day cricket, test cricket. South Africa, when they were sort of the #1 ranked test team between 2012 and 2015, for most parts, you know, they were highly impressive in test cricket, but they weren't able to translate that test form into winning world events in limited overs cricket. And similarly here now, England playing so spectacularly well in one-day cricket, and you know, they're the #1 ranked team in the world, as well as the World Cup champions in the 50 over stuff. But you know, their test form has been questionable. You know, losing the test series in the West Indies, and now they haven't lost a test series, but they're not winning the Ashes this time around. So it's difficult in the modern game to be successful in both white ball and red ball cricket at the same time as an international unit. I know people would say Australia was successful in both 50 over World Cups and Test cricket at the same time. You know, think of the World Cups they won in 2003 and 2007 and 99, and they were dominating the Test game at the same time. But obviously they had a great side. You know, it was the golden years of Australian cricket. But it was a different type of one-day cricket then. It was more in line with Test cricket in terms of building an innings and keeping wickets in hand, and you know, there wasn't really the third format 2020 then. You know, the first World T20 2007, and the Indian Premier League in 2008 when it came through. You know, that 2020 really emerged a bit later after Australia's domination across both 50 over cricket and Test cricket. So that's my take on events in the cricketing world, and let me finish by congratulating Thailand on reaching the Women's World T20 finals in Australia in the first quarter of next year. They've qualified for the tournament as one of the 10 teams, and you know, it's not Scotland, it's not Netherlands, it's not Ireland who are getting on that plane to Australia, but it is Thailand. It's a terrific story, and one that makes you sit up and take notice. Thailand, they're going to be one of the 10 teams participating in the Women's World T20, and obviously terrific news for them. And obviously they're going to have to step up their game in order to be competitive in that tournament in Australia, but you know, it's a remarkable story. Not many would have given them a chance of qualifying in the qualifiers tournaments ahead of the likes of Scotland, Ireland, and Netherlands, but they've done it, and yeah, it's a remarkable story and great for Thailand cricket and Thailand sport, and a great story. And it should be interesting to see if there are similar stories in the men's World T20 qualifier, or T20 World Cup qualifier, as it's now called, with the World T20 being renamed, and obviously there'll be the men's version of that also getting underway in the UAE in October. And that's going to be interesting because they're not going to be Super 10s anymore in the T20 World Cup. They're going to be Super 12, so there are going to be more spots up for grabs in the main draw. So I will conclude my analysis and my show here, and that will do for today. Thank you for listening.